And so he goes on and tells them about the ring. And what the plan is, that if the ring is destroyed, then Sauron shall fall. Page 879. Top of the page. If it is destroyed, then he will fall. And his fall will be so low that none can foresee his arising ever again. For he will lose the best part of the strength that was native to him in his beginning. Native to him in his beginning. That is, Sauron, the Maya, the angelic, the supernatural being, will lose the power that he had when he was first created by Eru Ilúvatar. And all that was made or begun with that power will crumble. And he will be maimed forever, becoming a mere spirit of malice that gnaws itself in the shadows, but cannot again grow or take shape. And so a great evil of this world will be removed. Notice the all-important article. A great evil, not the great evil. Why? Listen to Gandalf's next paragraph. Other evils there are that may come, for Sauron is himself but a servant or emissary. Tolkien does not suggest that we can do away with evil for all time, that we can battle a great evil in our time and therefore end evil. The problem President Bush made, in his September 20th address to the nation in 2001, was he said, in announcing the war on terror, that the war would essentially only be won when terror is annihilated. But one can never annihilate terror. The only way you could completely annihilate terror is when everybody's dead but one person. Because any person can become a source of terror for any other person. Gandalf. Yet it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. But whether they shall have is not ours to rule. In other words, we don't have to stop the problem for all time, Gandalf is saying, wisely. He's saying, it's our job to deal with the problems of our age. We should not give our children and grandchildren, we should not bequeath to them problems that are ours. Well, let's do a little applicability, since Tolkien likes that. What's he talking about? In our day and age, he could be talking about things as, trivial in a sense, as Social Security going bankrupt. We should not pass that down to our children and grandchildren. We should do what we can do now to make sure that doesn't happen, or to change the system. Okay? The national debt. We should not pass that down to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That is something we should take care of now. Okay? Those are little domestic things. I know they're not little, but you get the idea. What about foreign things? The problem of Al-Qaeda is our problem. The problem of the Taliban, it's our problem. It is not a problem that should have to be dealt with by our children or their children. That's what Gandalf means. Okay? He says, now Sauron understands all this. Sauron understands if the ring is destroyed, then he's gone. But Sauron doesn't think anyone would ever want to destroy the ring. He only thinks, who out there is strong enough to wield the ring? And Gandalf says, don't I guess aright, Aragorn, that you looked into the stone of Orthanc? And Aragorn says, yes, I did. I deemed that the time was ripe, and that the stone had come to me for just such a purpose. It was then 10 days since the ring-bearer went east from Rauros, and the eye of Sauron, I thought, should be drawn out from his own land. Too seldom has he been challenged since he returned to his tower. So Aragorn says, I thought, because Frodo and Sam were making their way to Mordor, I could do something that would draw his attention even more out and away from Mordor. I wanted to get Sauron looking outwardly rather than to be looking inwardly. Okay, so what does it mean when Aragorn says Too seldom has he been challenged. Well, how did he challenge him? If you go back and read the section where we have Aragorn doing that, Aragorn essentially tells us, he didn't see me the way you see me now. Meaning, when Aragorn looked into the stone of Orthanc, he showed Sauron what he wanted Sauron to see. Aragorn says, okay, it's not in this particular passage. It is earlier. But he says, he showed Sauron what he wanted Sauron to see. In other words, Sauron saw the king of Gondor. Sauron saw the heir of Isildur with the sword that was broken reforged. And the heir of Isildur essentially said, I'm coming for you. So Gandalf tells us, page 880 at the top. His doubt will be growing. His eye is now straining towards us, blind almost to all else that is moving. So we must keep it. Therein lies all our hope. We must draw Sauron out even more from Mordor. He says, Gandalf says, we must at all costs keep his eye from his true peril. We cannot achieve victory by arms, but by arms we can give the ring bearer his only chance, frail though it be. What Gandalf is saying is we will become the diversion. We will become the diversionary tactic that will make Sauron move one way and forget about his flank. As Aragorn has begun, so we must go on. We must push Sauron to his last throw. We must walk open-eyed into that trap, Gandalf says, with courage, but small hope for ourselves. This is a very Anglo-Saxon Germanic notion. It's what Tolkien's talking about there at the end of the fairy story essay when he says that the eucatastrophe says that in the face of much evidence to the contrary, there is hope for the defeat of evil. But Gandalf says, we must walk with courage, but small hope for ourselves. What does he mean, small hope? Their only hope can be that Frodo destroys the ring in time for them not to get annihilated by all the forces of Sauron. He says, it may well prove that we ourselves shall perish utterly in a black battle far from the living lands, so that even if Barad-dûr be thrown down, we shall not live to see a new age. That is, we might die long before Frodo actually destroys the ring. But this, I deem, is our duty. This is our responsibility. This is our obligation. And better so than to perish nonetheless. Very, very important. Notice what he's saying. It's better to die this way than to perish nonetheless, as we surely shall if we sit here and know as we die that no new age shall be. What does he mean? It's better to die this way, to march out and draw Sauron out to us, than to die sitting here, defending our little kingdom, knowing that what we do here will not lead to a new age. At least if we march out and draw Sauron forth out of Mordor, we can die with the hope that there will be a new age coming after us. With the hope that even though we might die, Frodo will still succeed. What he's saying is that if we just sit here and mount our defenses, then we don't give Frodo additional hope to succeed. And that is what we must do. We must use our lives for that. Okay? So they sit silently for a while. And Aragorn says, as I have begun, so I will go on. We come now to the very brink when hope and despair are akin. That is, hope and despair are like the two sides of a coin. It's a thin razor edge between them. To waver is to fall. To waver, to have doubt. He says, that's failure. Let none now reject the counsels of Gandalf, whose long labors against Sauron come at last to their test. So, they decide what they're going to do. They leave some defenses back, but then they march. And they march out to Mordor, and they stand before the black gates of the Morannon. And Gandalf challenges them. In the mouth of Sauron, an emissary comes out, and they speak for a while, and he shows them Frodo's belongings, and Pippin lets out a little squeak. Gandalf tells him to shush. And then Gandalf rides up to the mouth of Sauron, and he takes Frodo's belongings from him. And Gandalf says on page 890, after the mouth of Sauron names the terms, that is, the terms of their surrender. Page 890, the very bottom of the page. When the mouth of Sauron finally says, these are Sauron's terms, take them and read them, Gandalf says, these we will take. And he cast aside his cloak, and a white light shone forth like a sword in that black place. Before his upraised hand the foul messenger recoiled, and Gandalf coming seized and took from him the tokens, coat, cloak, and sword. These we will take in memory of our friend, but as for your terms we reject them utterly. Get you gone, for your embassy is over and death is near to you. We did not come here to waste words in treating with Sauron, faithless and accursed, still less with one of his slaves. Be gone! And we hear the drums roll, the gates open. The forces of Sauron smother them. And we finish the chapter with Pippin thinking. And he says, I wish Merry was here. We might die together at least. And then there's a big troll. And Pippin stabs upward. And we're told at the bottom of 892, and the written blade of Westernessa pierced through the hide and went deep into the vitals of the troll. And his black blood came gushing out. And then suddenly Pippin hears, the eagles are coming, the eagles are coming. And he thinks, Bilbo, wait, no, that's Bilbo's tale. That's how The Hobbit ended. And he faints. And we're at the end of book 5, and Tolkien gives us book 6. And we go all the way back to the Tower of Cirith Ungol. He leaves us hanging at the black gates of Mordor with what appears to be the forces of the West being overridden by the forces of Sauron. The Tower of Cirith Ungol. Sam sits down. He's thinking what to do. And page 899, he takes the ring off, and he looks towards Orodruin, the Mountain of Fire. And he looks back at the Tower of Cirith Ungol. And now he understands that the tower had been built not to keep enemies out of Mordor, but to keep them in. And he understands the tower had been built not by Sauron, but by the men of Westernessa, to keep Sauron and his forces inside. At the bottom of 900 and 901, Sam starts to think more about the ring. And as he thinks more and more, Sam starts to feel himself enlarged, like he's growing bigger. As if he were robed, we're told, at the bottom of 900. In a huge, distorted shadow of himself, a vast and ominous threat halted upon the walls of Mordor. He felt that he had from now on only two choices: to forbear the ring